right, hello, my name is Christine Richards, and I am the Research Director for Zpryme. And we're thrilled to have with us today Dr. Pat Kennedy, who is the CEO of OSIsoft. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you, Christine.
So we worked on a panel today around big data and analytics, and just wanted to get a better sense of you. We talked a little bit around historical data and the role that that plays in big data and analytics. How does historical data start to work with some more of the real-time data that's coming in? What needs to come together with these different data sources to really have some effective analytics for utilities?
Well, historical data, comes into effect mainly in forensics.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you looked at asset management, you're trying to see why things break. Oftentimes you got to go back and look at the near misses, which you wouldn't find with an event system. So my point was that we need all of the data. We need the history, we need the data as it is today, and then we need a lot of external data too, because sometimes weather, sometimes market, there's many other influences on a system.
Okay. And one thing that we've talked about in some email exchanges is around technology disruption. So, there are a lot of things, there's a debate of what does technology disruption really mean. But you talked about, just with it being a noisy environment out there, a lot of things going on, that sometimes it's just hard to see these things coming. What are some things that you see out there that could be potential disruptors for big data and analytics?
The point with the noisy environment is that if there is a big disruption, it's here now. We just don't see it because of the noise. And it could be anything. It could be, for example, driverless cars. Mm-hmm. They would change completely the demographics. No more parking, no more stoplights. You can send the kids off to soccer without having to go out and get in a car. Yeah. It just changes everything. And there's probably dozens of those, and the real point is which ones are going to come ahead and which ones aren't. Where big data come into it is by looking at all of the information, we can start to see some of these trends that we couldn't see before. And anybody that's looked at some of the interesting articles that Google's written just on the incidence of a word, mm-hmm. like they'll see an incident of a word, whatever, and they'll use that to infer something from it. And you wouldn't think it means much, but once you read it, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So another thing is just, I think, looking more broadly, in the coming year, the next few years, what are some of the major challenges and opportunities that you see with big data and analytics for utility companies?
I think one of the challenges is that the amount of data they're going to be getting is going to increase faster than they can use it, no matter how fast they move. Yeah. And part of the amount is not only the number of points, number of sensors, but the fidelity of the sensor. They were talking on the stage about using synchronous phasers, and these are instruments that measure 120 a second. Mm-hmm. And so now, for every variable. So now you're starting to get much, much more data, and the procedures and the data centers and the networks are going to have to be upgraded to cope with all this.
Yeah. And what are some of the biggest opportunities that you see for utility companies?
Well, I see the biggest opportunity is what the head of the ISO in California used to call his 4% problem. If you can cut 4 hours off of the clip of the peak demand in California, you can avoid building a power plant. Mm-hmm. And so by looking at all of these data, you start to see the patterns, and you can start to plan for those patterns and avoid these peaks that they have to go out and build for. And I think that's the biggest opportunity. So
with all these things going on, what is OSIsoft looking to do in 2015 and beyond? What are some of your big goals?
Well, we try to have these planning meetings, and then we end up next year doing the same thing. Yeah. And the market we sell into, which is sensor-based data, mm-hmm. is expanding very, very rapidly. And so every year we've been going up at an aggregate 13% a year, even through the Depression. Mm-hmm. For our development, our biggest push is going to be two things. We're going to be doing more. We have a cloud product now for exchanging data between companies, but we're going to put historians in the cloud. And then we're also working diligently to work with other companies. Esri, SAS are two of the kind of companies that we want to work more closely with because each of us has a set of the data.
Yeah. So when you say companies passing information through, you know, essentially a cloud database, I mean, what kind of companies would be sharing that information?
It could be a heavy equipment maker that wants to see data from its equipment, somebody like Caterpillar. Because what the issue is that you're asking for data out of an IT network that's not yours, and you no longer own the equipment, but you want to provide services for it. So the cloud gives a nice arm's length, easy commercial way to bring data back and forth. Another example are joint ventures. A lot of pipelines and power plants are joint ventures, and you have to send data back and forth to different companies. Anytime it's a different company, it takes different IT procedures to exchange data between them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we're starting to see that overlap just between different industries and different companies. So that's great to see.
It is. In the old days, you do just what was called a VPN, or virtual private network. But to do that, you have to get into a negotiation between the two IT departments, which is almost as much fun as having to get into a negotiation between two legal departments.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today, Pat.
Well, thank you.